Got to highlight that, but she wants everyone to know it's not why she plays. She's trying to, deep from like Michigan.
It's a mentality.
That'll be the first personal on DiJonai Carrington.
Look at the date on your calendar. Look at the final score flashing across the arena monitors. The clock has expired on August 23rd. The final buzzer has sounded in Chicago. And what we are left with in the aftermath is not a debate. It is not a statistical anomaly. And it certainly is not a moral victory for the home team. What we are left with is the deafening, undeniable sound of a complete and total competitive demolition. The Indiana Fever walked into Wintrust Arena and systematically dismantled the Chicago Sky by a final score of 113-90.
Let's get into the highlights. 8 threes for Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark sets a new career high with 8 triples tonight. Mercedes Russell looking for CC, dribble handoff, Caitlin Clark, step back on Sydney Taylor, create some space, splash. I mean, this folks, you guys ever watch Avengers Endgame, where Thanos is getting fucked up by not Black Widow.
Closing out their road trip with a 23-point statement that should reverberate through every front office and coaching staff in professional basketball. We need to have a very serious, very direct conversation about what just unfolded, because the narrative machinery that spent the past week building up this matchup just ran headfirst into an absolute basketball buzzsaw. For days, the social media ecosystem was flooded with manufactured bravado. Following her flagrant foul and subsequent ejection in their previous meeting, DiJonai Carrington took to her platforms, posted the date, 8/23, complete with a smiling emoji, and signaled to the world that August 23rd was going to be her personal day of retribution. She circled the date. She invited the spotlight. She told the basketball community that this specific Friday night was the moment she was going to settle the score against Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and the Indiana Fever. Well, August 23rd arrived, the ball was tipped, and when the dust settled, Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell had turned Carrington's circled date into an absolute masterclass of offensive destruction. They did not just win a basketball game. They took that date, took that personal challenge, and delivered an unmitigated 23-point thrashing from wire to wire. Let us start with Caitlin Clark, because what we witnessed from her tonight is not merely an elite performance, it is an unprecedented statistical earthquake that permanently alters the historical ledger of the WNBA. Caitlin Clark walked off the floor in Chicago with 37 points, 10 assists, and 8 made three-pointers on 12 attempts. She was 1 three-pointer away from a 40-point double-double on the road. But the raw box score alone does not begin to capture the historical magnitude of what she accomplished. With this performance, Caitlin Clark secured her 5th career regular season game of at least 30 points and 10 assists. Let that sink in. Let it marinate. 5 career games of 30 points and 10 assists. To understand just how historic, how absurd, and how utterly dominant that milestone truly is, consider this fact. Caitlin Clark now has more 30-point, 10-assist games in her career by herself than the entire rest of the WNBA combined in the 28-year history of the league. Read that again. Take every legendary guard, every Hall of Fame playmaker, every transcendent scorer who has ever laced up sneakers in this league across nearly 3 decades of professional competition. Combine all of their 30-point, 10-assist performances together, and Caitlin Clark has surpassed that entire collective history in less than 2 full seasons. Think about the sheer weight of that reality. We are watching someone fundamentally rewrite the boundaries of what is possible at the guard position in real time. And she is doing it while facing defensive game plans entirely constructed to eliminate her from the opening tip. Look at how Clark constructed this masterpiece over 40 minutes. In the first half, when the game was tightly contested and Indiana needed stability, Clark carried the entire offensive burden on her shoulders. She posted 18 points, knocked down 3 triples, and dished out 6 assists in the opening 20 minutes. Yes, she had 5 turnovers in that first half, a metric that critics and commentators immediately jumped on during the halftime break to justify their skepticism. But what did she do when she stepped onto the floor for the second half? She delivered the most disciplined, lethal, and surgically precise half of basketball of her professional career. Clark played the entire second half, 20 full minutes of high-speed, high-leverage competition without committing a single turnover. Not one. 0 turnovers in the second half. She completely eliminated the errors, dictated the tempo on every single possession, manipulated Chicago's defensive rotations with surgical precision, and orchestrated an offensive explosion that dropped 33 points in the third quarter and 30 points in the fourth quarter. And she was not alone. Her running mate, Kelsey Mitchell, put on a complimentary scoring clinic that turned this contest into an absolute track meet. Kelsey Mitchell entered halftime with just 7 points. She had endured a quiet opening 20 minutes, while Clark was shouldering the scoring load. But when the third quarter began, Mitchell completely erupted. She scored between 14 and 17 points in the third frame alone, pushing her personal tally from 7 to 21 before the fourth quarter even started. She finished the night with 30 points on 14 of 21 shooting from the field, 6 of 9 from beyond the arc, and 4 assists. With that performance, Kelsey Mitchell extended her historic streak to 23 consecutive games, scoring at least 20 points, a milestone she secured with an entire quarter left to play. Now look at what those 2 guards did to Chicago's perimeter defense when you combine their production. Together, Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell shot 14 of 21 from three-point range. 14 made three-pointers on 21 attempts. That is 66.7% shooting from beyond the arc on massive, high-difficulty, heavily contested volume. In the competitive gaming world, they have a phrase for a statistical beatdown of that magnitude. Good game, no rematch. Pack your bags, turn off the arena lights, and head to the team bus, because there is no defensive architecture in modern basketball capable of surviving 2 elite guards trading knockout blows on alternating possessions. One trip down the floor, it was Mitchell hitting a dribble crossover between the legs, creating separation, stepping back, and burying a contested jumper in the defender's eye. The very next possession, it was Clark, using a high ball screen, pulling up from 35 feet out and splashing a logo triple. They were trading turns, raining absolute fire on the Chicago sky. It looked like a scene straight out of an action movie where the heroes simply decide to rain fire on everything in sight. Chicago had no answers, no adjustments, and no defensive personnel capable of containing that level of perimeter shot making. And that brings us to the tactical and structural revelation of this entire game. What Indiana's offense looked like without Aaliyah Boston on the floor. Aaliyah Boston was ruled out for this contest, forcing the coaching staff to alter their starting front court. For weeks, we have heard mainstream commentators question how Indiana would survive if their max contract interior presence was not available to anchor the half-court sets. But what actually materialized on the floor was the exact opposite of what the traditionalists predicted. The Indiana Fever offense did not stumble. It reached its absolute, uninhibited ceiling. Without a stationary post hub demanding touches at the elbow, without the ball sticking in the mid-post, and without the paint being clogged by slow-developing actions, the floor opened up into a pristine, high-tempo, space and pace paradise. The ball never stopped moving. The transition passing was instantaneous. The driving lanes were completely clear. And nobody capitalized on that open floor more brilliantly, more aggressively, or more emphatically than Makayla Timpson. Makayla Timpson was inserted into the starting lineup at the power forward position, and she delivered a performance that should permanently end any debate about who belongs in Indiana's starting front court moving forward. Timpson logged 31 minutes, scored 12 points, pulled down 9 rebounds, and set the physical tone of the game from the opening seconds. On the very first play of the game, Clark pushed the ball off a defensive stop, saw Timpson sprinting the floor with elite end-to-end speed, and hit her in stride for an effortless transition layup. It looked identical to the devastating transition chemistry Clark shared with Hannah Stolke during her historic run at Iowa. An athletic, hypermobile big who runs the floor with purpose, beats the opposing front court down the hardwood, catches cleanly in transition, and finishes with high efficiency around the rim. Timpson is not automatic around the basket, but she is as close to it as Indiana has on this roster. When Clark throws her the ball in the paint, she goes up with authority, and the ball goes through the net. And defensively, Timpson completely changed the geometry of the interior. She did not back down from Chicago's physical front court. She contested every drive, rotated with discipline, and delivered an emphatic, statement-level block on Camila Cardoso, rejecting her at the rim and letting the entire arena know that size without mobility was not going to dominate the paint tonight. Mikayla Timpson is a legitimate starting-caliber power forward in this league. She provides the defensive range, the rim protection, and the transition athleticism that this Clark-led system desperately requires. Look at how the rest of the rotation functioned within this high-tempo ecosystem. Monique Billings earned the starting nod at center, providing 6 points and 5 rebounds in solid, physical first-half minutes. When the second half began, Stephanie White adjusted the lineup by inserting Mercedes Russell at center, which paid immediate dividends. Russell set solid, fundamentally sound screens and executed crisp dribble handoff actions at the top of the key, creating immediate daylight for Clark to step into rhythm threes. Lexi Hull contributed 14 points and 2 rebounds, cutting hard off the ball, running the floor in transition, and knocking down open perimeter looks created by the gravity of the backcourt. Maisha Hines-Allen brought 5 points of active interior energy. Sophie Cunningham provided 3 points in her minutes, while Ty Harris, Raven Johnson, Grace Berger, and Bria Beal all saw floor time as the bench was completely emptied in the closing minutes of a 23-point runaway victory. Every single player who touched the floor understood their role because the offense had absolute clarity of purpose. Now, let us contrast Indiana's complete, unified masterclass with the performance of DiJonai Carrington and the Chicago Sky. Carrington circled August 23rd on the calendar. She made sure her social media followers knew that this rematch was her designated platform for redemption. She had the home crowd, she had the national spotlight, and she had the opportunity to back up every word and every gesture that followed her flagrant foul on Sophie Cunningham. And what did she produce when the lights were turned on? 7 points. 7 points on a night she personally designated as her showcase. She watched Caitlin Clark hang 37 points, 10 assists, and 8 threes directly on her team's perimeter defense. She watched Kelsey Mitchell drop 30 points on 66% shooting from deep. She watched the Indiana backcourt combine for 67 points, while she managed a measly 7 points in an embarrassing 23-point blowout loss on her own home floor. That is the definitive difference between online bravado and professional execution. Social media posts do not win basketball games. Emojis do not defend 35-foot pull-up jumpers. When the ball is tipped, performance is the only currency that matters, and Carrington's 7-point showing was an absolute bankruptcy in front of her home fans. The game also featured moments of intense sideline drama that illustrated the unique cultural spotlight surrounding this Indiana team. Former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom was seated courtside in the front row, taking in the action. During a break in play, cameras captured a direct, tense, face-to-face interaction between Natasha Cloud and Freedom near the baseline. It served as yet another reminder that wherever this Indiana Fever team travels, the cultural gravity, the outside scrutiny, and the media spotlight follow them into the building. Even the television broadcast reflected the historic nature of what was taking place. The NBC announce team called this game with exceptional professionalism, balance, and analytical rigor. As Clark was chasing down another historic milestone, the broadcast crew ensured the national audience understood the full context of the records on the line. They did not attempt to diminish the performance. They did not manufacture distracting side narratives. And they gave Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell the flowers their historic shot-making demanded. And that brings us to the ultimate, inescapable conclusion that head coach Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever front office must confront after watching this game tape. For months, we have seen this coaching staff complicate what should be the simplest offensive formula in professional basketball. We have seen games bogged down by stationary post touches, slow developing hub actions, and disjointed schemes that forced Caitlin Clark into off-ball spectator roles while the offense stagnated into low-efficiency half-court possessions. This game in Chicago provided the absolute, undeniable, permanent blueprint for how the Indiana Fever must play basketball moving forward. When you put the ball in Caitlin Clark's hands from the opening possession, spread the floor with shooters like Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hall, surround her with athletic, rim-running bigs like Michaela Timpson, who can sprint the floor and finish in transition, and push the pace for 40 continuous minutes, this team is an unstoppable offensive juggernaut. The first 7 minutes of this game were a clinic in modern, high-efficiency basketball. Clark pushed the tempo, read the drop coverage, punished the switches, and found open teammates in rhythm. When Indiana plays Caitlin Clark's brand of basketball, high pace, transition heavy, space and pace execution, they do not merely squeak out victories, they blow quality professional teams off their own home floors by 20-plus points. The numbers from August 23rd are written into the permanent record of the sport. Caitlin Clark, 37 points, 10 assists, 8 threes, 0 second-half turnovers, and her 5th career 30-10 game to surpass the entire history of the league combined. Kelsey Mitchell, 30 points, 6 threes, and her 23rd consecutive 20-point performance. Michaela Timpson, 12 points, 9 rebounds, and an authoritative defensive presence that locked down the interior. A 113-90 victory that closed out the road trip in dominant fashion. The date was circled, the statement was made, but it was not made by the Chicago Sky, and it was not made on social media. It was delivered on the hardwood by the most lethal, explosive, and historically dominant backcourt in the WNBA. It is time for Stephanie White to lock this identity in, throw the outdated hub offense into the trash, and never look back. Because when Caitlin Clark is given the keys to the engine, there is not a team in this league capable of standing in her way.